everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. On this episode, we're going to be covering the Baku Grand Prix. On the episode, we have Melissa, Hanna, Ito, and myself, Chelsea. And to start us off, we have Mel with some pre-race weekend news.
Now, of course, the biggest news of the weekend is not the most shocking, if I would say so myself. It is disappointing because Adrian Newey is confirmed to join Aston Martin in 2025 as their managing technical director. Happy for the guy to stay in the sport, but I wish he joined Ferrari. And I'll leave it at that. Now to the true meat and bones of this podcast that you all like to listen to. Let's talk about the race weekend. Now, in FP1, unfortunately, Charles did not have such a great start to the weekend as he crashed into the barriers at turn 15, causing the second red flag of that session. No worries though, he is okay. And if you ask me, maybe he's just taking out those nervous jitters out the way.
Not gonna lie, after his crash in Baku way back when, my first reaction was, what else is new? Honestly, same with Franco losing some ballast off his car and causing a red flag for that for a hot second.
Yeah, he literally clouded the barriers at turn 4, and the damage was severe enough to determine that the car couldn't be returned to the garages. And like Ito mentioned, another red flag was brought out.
We also had Esti out. He couldn't set a time because he ended up having power unit issues, which was a common theme this weekend.
It just seems like everyone was just knocking out those little issues early on in these sessions. But your top three in FP1 was Max in P1, followed by Lewis in P2, and Checo in P3. And I'm going to be honest, it's nice seeing Checo back at the top. Now, into FP2, our top three were Charles in P1, followed by Checo in P2, and Lewis in P3. Now, if you ask me, who doesn't love a little switcheroo in the top standings?
There's also Lando, who, as a fan, I was sad to see keeps going down in the timesheets, which sucks. But also ironic, considering the papaya rules that were just released a week ago and now no longer matter.
Moving on to FP3 the next day. And that just confirmed that it definitely wasn't Esteban's weekend because from the power unit issues that we talked about, now he was stalled on track, not able to move. So clearly, those weren't resolved.
It is a Williams weekend, though. They finished both in the top 10, and while I very much still miss our American driver, shout out Logie, Colapinto is doing really well. So, congrats to him. At least he's really kicking ass.
He definitely is. But who isn't kicking ass in a very good car is Checo, because apparently it has been the longest time since Checo joined Red Bull that he has not been on the podium. It's been, if I recall correctly, 8 races now. But then, of course, we got someone else on the wall, and this time it was Ollie Behrman.
It did suck seeing Ollie going to the wall. I mean, I feel like Haas had a little bit of a rough start to the weekend there. But we'll talk about it. I feel like he had a good redemption. What I thought was awesome was George coming out on top for FP3. I'm sure he was really happy because I feel like on Friday, if I'm not wrong, he was worried about the car because he didn't feel comfy in it or how it was driving. So for him to come out on top, I feel like it's very reassuring when you're a driver and you're about to go into another Grand Prix weekend. So he did pretty well this weekend.
Yeah, I think that was funny George brought that up because in the post practice session interviews, Lewis was talking about it. He was like, yeah, the car feels great, but George was on the completely opposite end of the spectrum on that. It's just funny whenever that happens between the two drivers on the same team. But going into quali, it was just an insane Q1 because talk about close calls with these drivers as both Colapinto and Ricardo hit the walls, leaving certain turns at the track, and it was just crazy, or they just came, they were literally kissing the walls, and it was just nerve-wracking. And Carlos, making my heart skip a beat. He ran wide ahead of a turn, but went off into the little like runoff area that they have, just causing a yellow flag for a hot second. But thankfully he was able to get back into the session. And I have to say, as Chelsea mentioned earlier, both Williams were just absolutely on fire for this weekend. However, unfortunately, out of Q1 was Danny Rick, Lando, Bottas, Esteban, and Zhou.
That was actually very surprising for me to see Lando's name pop up and I know on Lando's radio he had stated that while everyone got to do at least 2 laps, he was only able to do 1, and it wasn't considered like his push lap. So I can understand the 17th place, and I know that wasn't like ideal.
Now, going into Q2, again, Williams, what did you guys do ahead of this weekend? What kind of voodoo, what kind of pixie dust? Because they were just on fire with Colapinto and Albon moving on to the next session. Like, that's just very unheard of with both drivers, especially a rookie one, if you ask me.
Honestly, I would like to talk to Williams people, see if they want to come over to Ferrari a little bit more often, But really, like, I felt bad for Bierman because on the radio, he, like, called himself an idiot for not getting into Q3. And while I completely understand as, like, a sports person, you're going to be harsh on yourself, I feel like he's doing pretty well, all things considered. And Q2 is not a bad spot as someone just coming into Formula One to kind of drive for a weekend.
Especially for a team like Haas, really unheard of. However, out of Q2, unfortunately, was Ollie, followed by Yuki, Pierre, Hulkenberg, and Stroll.
Meaning we got started on Q3, where, fun fact, Franco is the first Argentinian driver since Reutemann in the 80s to enter Q3. To me, that is an insane statistic.
And talking about insane, Williams let their airbox cooler on top of Albon's car, or on Albon's car, and the man literally took off at the end of the pit lane, and like he literally stopped at the end and just like casually just like yanked it off. But I watched like a little like video from like the garage, and like you see like one of their mechanics like trying to like pull it off, and like Albon's just like la 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 la, and like strolling off. There's just a lot of questions, but the incident was noted as an unsafe release and resulted in a nice €5,000 fine.
Definitely not Williams' weekend as a whole, but at least Franco delivered.
Please, I still do not understand. When I saw him throw out how, like, the fan and saw how large it was, I don't understand how they forget that's in his car. But it was kind of funny now after the fact. So, great moment in F1 history now.
That little pile of like dry ice just like flying off was pretty hilarious to see. At least it's not dangerous. But your top 10 for the weekend: Charles got pole, very happy in the PGP group, followed by Oscar in P2. P3 was Sainz, P4 Checo, George in P5, Max was in P6, followed by Lewis in P7, then Fernando in P8, Colapinto in P9, and Albon in P10. Now, after post-quali, some not so fun news came out for Alpine. It just seems like they can just never have any luck in any race weekends, and Pierre was disqualified from quali due to his car, quote, exceeding the instantaneous fuel mass flow, unquote, during Q2. So he will be starting from P20 coming into the race. And both Lewis and Esteban started from the pit lane as their cars got new engines.
We also had Zhou starting from the back of the grid. It was because of the power unit changes. And then 2 fun facts. This was Charles' 4th consecutive pole in a row at Baku. Beautiful, beautiful to see and witness. And SD was completing his 150th Formula One race start. So, congratulations. That is amazing if you guys ever listen to this.
And then I saw a fact online that stated that everyone has used the actual allotted amount of power units given in a given season. And actually starting after Baku, any changes actually result in penalties. Now, don't quote me on this. I did not go and fact check it, but it was if you had to replace it one more time, then you get a 10 grid place penalty. If you have to replace it another time, it's like 15, and then so on and so on. So that's insane that not only have they gone through them that quickly, but that you get penalized for that. I thought you just got fined.
I feel like it would make more sense if you asked me if they just get like pit lane grid starts instead of like doing that type of math. But that's just me. But going into the race, of course, Charles got an amazing start to the race and he held on to first place.
As a Charles girly, I was happy, but at the same time, I was hoping for a bit more chaos at the start with the tightness of Baku. Just me.
And speaking of great starts, we also have to give credit to Lando because he moved up 5 spots into P12 just within the first lap.
I think after the crazy qualifying that Lando have, I honestly believe he came to fight, and it was great to kind of see him move up the ranks, especially so quickly.
For real, it was really nice to see that. However, unfortunately, Lance had to pit stop super, super early. I'm talking about the first lap in the race due to a puncture on his tire from a slight collision with Yuki.
What made me laugh about it though was his radio after. In general, his radios this weekend especially very much gave cranky toddler vibes.
However, sadly, Yuki had DNF by lap 15.
They barely showed this on the TV, so I don't know if like y'all caught it, but when they zoomed in on him and he went back to the pits, he seemed so mad. Like he was not having it. He was like, get me out of here.
Now, I really don't blame him because he DNF'd here and he DNF'd last week in Monza, so I would be pretty pissed off if I were him too. Now, one moment in the race that really like literally made my jaw drop because I did not see it happen was Alex Albon in P3 at the 18th lap. Who would have thought we would see a Williams so high up on the grid? Not me. I know that's for sure. Now, by lap 20, we had a little switcheroo at the top. Oscar had taken the lead of the Grand Prix, and I have to give him credit. That overtake was a nice move on Oscar because Charles literally did not see that happening. And Franco Colapinto, I gotta give you credit. You're doing a stellar job in holding that P10 spot just fine. That kid, something was in him that weekend.
Definitely, because even after his pit stop, he gave Fernando a run for his money in P15.
It's just nice seeing the Hispanic Latino battle out sometimes. No big deal. But speaking of battles, it was also nice seeing Lando defend against Max for grid spots, aka points in the Drivers' Championship standings. They're very close at this point, and it's not even just between the two of them if we're being honest.
Honestly, I think this was the first race all season I've seen Lando truly defend against Max. Because there's been races where it almost feels like he's handed it to him, and I was just like, come on.
No, same. There's been times where I'm just like, can you defend for like a little bit? Now, around lap 37, it looks like we did have some team orders as William had their drivers swap positions, and Albon was now in the top 10 with Colapinto and P11. However, shortly after, I was dying as Charles' engineer went on the radio asking him how he feels about going on to plan C. And Charles' response was literally, quote, "That's stupid." And I was just cracking up at the sass that he brought out. Now, again, Stroll looks like he's just never able to get any luck this season because he had DNF'd at lap 47 due to some brake issues. Now, at this point of the race, as a fan of Charles and Ferrari, he started going on the radio talking about how he was struggling with his rear tires, causing Perez to get closer to him, and I really want him to hold on to that P2 spot so badly. I was very sad. But probably the most shocking moment of the whole race, Carlos and Checo had crashed during the final 2 laps. It was kind of a scary collision, if you ask me, and a yellow flag was brought out.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't remember the last time we had like an exciting final, not that we want accidents, but like an exciting final lap, like accident, last minute kind of thing that ends the race. And it was very entertaining to watch, even though I didn't love that it was Carlos. Also, did you guys see that Checo like tapped Carlos's head after he got out the car? So, to be a fly on the wall, my friends, it was just entertaining.
And especially during Hispanic Heritage Month, like Mexicans,
Just hello, where's the love?
literally Mexicans, Independence Day was yesterday, I believe. Like it's this weekend, so like that Hispanic on Latino crime, come on now. But it's actually like I was reading up on that because like people were like saying that was pretty dangerous for Checo to do because like Carlos could have had like a concussion or just like any sort of like head or brain injury. So like that's just not a smart move. I get the frustration, especially like if you're in the contention for like a podium finish. But I mean, I don't know. There's just different ways to just like hit the car. The car's already damaged. Come on now. That's all I think about that. But I mean, it was just, I thought it was ironic that it was just during this time of the month.
I mean, honestly, the first thought I had was I had flashbacks when I think Bottas did it to George a while back, like a few years ago. But also, the head injury part, like, I know historically drivers have been doing that, like, forever. But, like, people, we now know how dangerous this can be. Please stop.
They just need to get like punching bags in the garages so they can let out that frustration. So there's no like little physical altercations. However, a virtual safety car was deployed and the race will be ending under that. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm not the biggest Red Bull fan, but I do like Checo. And I was feeling bad for him because he was actually having a pretty great weekend. And I felt like it was kind of just good for his image with the team, if you say something like that, or if you will. So I was just like, he was doing so good. And then it just kind of all just goes away in a hot second like that. But it is Formula One.
Yeah, there was honestly so much controversy over this wreck, and social media has been blowing up about it. The fans of Sainz are blaming Checo and vice versa. Now, me personally, I think Checo was out of Sainz's view and was just following the racing line, so I think it was just a fluke accident. As far as hitting him on the head, it wasn't like a light, like, you did good. It was a hit. And that's, I think, where the issue is because most people do the light tap, like, good job, but it was a deliberate hit, and to me that was not okay.
Yeah, definitely not. And it was kind of annoying being on social media right after because the fans on both fan bases can be very annoying, as well as other drivers' fan bases, if you ask me. So I was just like, come on, guys. I was just like, it's a sport at the end of the day. Like, stuff is going to happen. Like, I do what you want with that information. However, the funniest thing about this whole incident was just that George was just minding his own business throughout the race and just holding his spot, and suddenly he just finishes on the podium.
This just goes to show that sometimes all you gotta do is keep your nose clean in order to end up towards the front, especially in places like Baku where the tight corners seem to do a lot of the talking.
As someone of George's instance, where he is usually known as the ruthless person, he's caused a lot of accidents in his career. There's no doubt. So to see him keep his nose clean and just snake his way to the podium was pretty intriguing to see, and maybe we'll see less wrecks from him.
Yeah, I do agree. It's kind of, it was just hilarious because he was just like doing his own thing, just literally minding his own business. And I just feel like at that moment he was just like, oh, P3, and like his like little posh accent and everything. However, Oscar Piastri is the winner of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix with Charles in second. And of course, as we mentioned, George in third. And Lando takes the fastest lap of the weekend.
I was honestly so proud of Oscar watching him finish the race and have this win under his belt. he said it was one of the most successful afternoons of his life, and I think this race was just chaotic enough that it makes up for almost that weird aura that was around his first race win. And seeing the pictures after the race win too, with Lando and like how happy they were together in the team photo, I feel like this weekend was a really good weekend for the McLaren team. So chef's kiss, beautiful watch.
Definitely a redemption weekend for Oscar because, as Chell said, his first win, while amazing, had a weird taste to it, sadly enough. But for me, the best part was his mom being there live and getting to hug him after. Like, come on. So good.
We all know she's an icon because right afterwards she tweeted that she will not be going to Pilates the next morning. That woman's dedicated to her Pilates, so I celebrate, girlfriend. Celebrate your son's win. But another winning aspect of the weekend was both Williams in the points, as Albon had finished in P7 and Colapinto in P8.
If Franco delivers like he did today for the rest of the season, he will definitely give Alex a run for his money. I feel like it will be interesting to see if James Voles favors him this season. We'll see, like he did with Alex over Logan in the past. Sorry, I had to say it.
At this point, I wouldn't be surprised and I wouldn't put it past James. However, I gotta say, Franco is well deserving of an F1 seat, possibly next season, if not in 2 years, because he definitely proved himself in this race that he can keep up with the race pace and earn some well deserved points. Now, another awesome little win, aside from, of course, Oscar, was that Ollie finished in the points in P10 ahead of his teammate Nico for the weekend. And a little fun PGP fact is that Ollie Behrman is the first driver in F1 history to score points in his first 2 races for 2 different teams.
Honestly, he has made an incredible debut so far. Even with only 2 races, I'm really excited to see him for a full season next year to see what he really can do, because he has absolutely killed it and he's keeping up with the big boys.
He's definitely keeping up, but I just hope he can keep keeping it up across a whole season, especially in a team that, dare I say, isn't too rookie friendly.
While you make a point, Ito, who knows, maybe he can break that curse and change things up in Haas, because, I mean, it's well overdue, and we all want Ollie to do pretty well in the sport, because that kid can drive, definitely. But in other bigger news, McLaren has officially taken the lead in the Constructors' Championship ahead of Red Bull. Insane. Just simply insane.
I think the championships right now are so interesting to watch. I mean, shout out to Lando. He fought for those McLaren points. I think he went from P15 to P4 to finish the race, right? And like, that's amazing. That's beautiful. Obviously, like, some people took themselves out, but that's okay. It was still amazing to watch. And I'm actually really excited because I don't know if we talked about it on the episode, but right now the championship is actually much closer than people think. It's not just someone chasing Max. It's like 4 people on the line. And we are finally witnessing this chaotic season that we've been begging for. So I'm very excited for the upcoming season and like the rest of the season coming, I mean.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's definitely been a lot of fun. I don't want to sound too anti-Red Bull, but this bad luck that Red Bull has had, I don't want to call it a downfall, even though I kind of wanted to, but this little stream of bad luck they've had, because Checo did good this weekend, we gotta say it, like, so it's really not that bad of a downfall. It's just, you know, they've been having issues ever since what's his name, I forgot his name, and Newey left the team and everything like that. And so just seeing that actual like fight for the top spot has been very entertaining, and just seeing like the variety of winners has been very pleasing as a fan. It's not like every weekend just going into and be like, oh, Max is gonna win. We just gotta watch the P2 through P20 and just watch for like the midfield battles, because those are actually really fun to watch, and we did have some good ones this weekend too.
I will say that while Max is a great driver, if Max wins this year, the driver championship, it's because he's earned it. It's because he's fought for it. It's because he's gone against the guys who have the equal or the better car. And he just has proved himself. And so it's really good to see, and it's really cool to see just the diversity of how everything has been changed up. I think right now, like, Lando has to score like 8 points ahead of Max every race in order to get the drivers championship right now. So that would be a close one. But honestly, if either of them win, it's very well deserved and earned.
That's very interesting with the 8 points, because is it insane to be that consistent? Yes. But also, Max hasn't been performing that well since what? I don't even remember. Pre-summer break, I mean, pre-Hungary, pre-Silverstone. And that's why I think this season is so exciting, because he was dominating so much last year that it almost got, dare I say, boring, because he won all but 3 races, and Red Bull in general won all but 1. And to see that switch up, it is like so beautiful, because it reminds me of 2021, but better, because it's even more diversity. It reminds me of like old school F1, where you would have the first 6 races of a season and you would have 6 different winners. And thank you. Just thank you. Whoever made this happen, thank you.
So it's actually been since China, since Max's car hasn't been performing well. But like Hannah said, if he still does win the Drivers' Championship, because points are points, and he finishes higher than Lando in any way, you gotta give him credit, because clearly he is a great driver. It's not only just the car. But I think he's still having fun, just like racing, probably with like other people and everything. It's just like a nice challenge. I don't know. I personally would probably feel bored if I just like took the lead and was like 20 million seconds ahead of everyone. But I mean, again, that's just me. I am not no race car driver. So what do I know? I just sit and watch. Now, we're off to Singapore next weekend. So we got to go into our little predictions. And as we all know in the past, and probably this year, it'll be a hot one. Literally. I can't wait for all the little prepping videos, if you ask me. It's another street circuit, but at night. Looking forward to this race. As we have seen, what I feel like are some interesting podium finishes. Now, for my predictions, podium aside, because I'll get to that in a second, I think we'll be seeing Checo come to life like we did this weekend at Baku. That man and his street circuits, they don't call him the king of the streets for no reason. However, I have a feeling we'll see Carlos in P1. I don't know. It's just a little gut feeling I have, but maybe it's just me being the Lulu, but the Lulu is the Salulu. Now for P2 and P3, I think we'll see Charles up there with his teammate and one of the McLaren boys up there. Who knows? Maybe we'll see some papaya rules come out again.
Maybe we'll finally know what that means, but definitely. Ferrari on the podium, maybe even a Carlos win again after last year would be amazing. But my dice had a different idea, because the top 3, in his opinion, are Lewis, Kevin. The dice technically said Ollie, but since he only replaced Magnussen for 1 race, I put Magnussen back at that spot. And then George. And while a Mercedes sandwich seems realistic, the Haas seems very unrealistic. Maybe if it was Behrman, because he's Behrman, but Magnussen, don't think so. He hasn't had a podium since his first race in a McLaren.
Now, last year, we had a really fun, finish. It was 3 different teams on the podium, and I would love a repeat of that. I think I could see Carlos aiming for the podium finish, especially with the accident that held him back this race. Lando, I think, as well, is going to come and try and get for the podium, especially with Oscar winning this race. And Max, hopefully, if they're able to fix the car maybe a little bit more to his liking, and he's happier with it, I think that they will do better and he will get on the podium as well. I know, like, right now they weren't up to his standards, but what I really can assume is that we're going to continue seeing either Lando or Oscar on the podium for the rest of the season, because with McLaren on top right now of the constructor championship, they might even just forget papaya rules and try and cinch that. If I was McLaren, that's what I would do. Sorry. Like, you guys can fight for the race. Whoever's the best driver wins. But I think we're going to keep seeing McLaren in general on podium finishes, which would be nice as a McLaren fan.
To speak off what Chelsea said, I think it makes 110% sense. It's hard to, as someone or a team that strives as to not have a 1-2. Really, if you're picking a 1-2 right now, it would kind of be going against the grain of what they typically do. And now that they've kind of gotten the championship, or hopefully the constructors, I think you just get as much points as you can, fight for the finish. But I mean, going back to Singapore, it is my favorite race, so I'm very looking forward to it, other than the time that the race is. And I look forward to it every year, partly because, it's the only track that Max hasn't won at. So it's interesting to see if he'll win this one. But I'm hoping for Carlos to win. If he does, it will be the 2nd year in a row. But I would also love Lando, Carlos, and Lewis on the podium. I think all 3 are very deserving. And with McLaren drivers up there in the papaya rules, it is going to be very interesting to see where the cards fall in the upcoming races, especially with everything being so close.
And to close out the episode, we have a moment of the weekend for you. Now, we have to give a special shout out to Mick Schumacher. Last night, he finished in 3rd with Alpine in the 6-hour Fiji Le Mans. What an epic moment.
Now, what a race weekend it was. Let us know what your thoughts on the Baku race was, and make sure to let us know on our socials. Everywhere, we are Paddock Girls Podcast, except for Twitter, where we are Paddock Girls Pod. Join us next weekend as we talk about the Singapore Grand Prix, and thank you for joining us in the paddock. Bye.
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 Bye.